Human nature hasn't changed. Not in 100 years, not in 400. The fears you feel, the doubts that keep you awake at night, the ambition that pushes you forward and sometimes destroys you, all of it already existed long before social media, before modern psychology, before the world we recognize today. William Shakespeare understood this better than anyone. He didn't write about perfect heroes or clear villains. He wrote about people, fragile, conflicted, emotional, and deeply human. And again, across his plays and sonnets, he revealed certain signs of human nature. Signs that, when ignored, almost always lead to the same outcome: tragedy. This is not about the past. This is about us. Because if Shakespeare were alive today, he wouldn't need to change a single line. The patterns are still here, the signs are still visible, and we are still ignoring them. Shakespeare lived in a world very different from ours, yet the minds he described feel uncomfortably familiar. Kings, soldiers, lovers, friends, they all struggle with the same inner conflicts we face today. Fear of failure, desire for power, jealousy, self-doubt, the need to be seen, admired, validated. What made Shakespeare extraordinary wasn't his language alone. It was his ability to observe the human mind without illusion. He didn't moralize, he didn't preach. He showed consequences. His characters aren't punished because the world is cruel. They fall because they fail to recognize themselves. Again and again, they ignore clear signs of what is happening inside them until it's too late. And that brings us to the first sign. One of the most dangerous things a person can do is deny their own nature. Shakespeare returns to this idea constantly. Characters try to become someone they are not, or refuse to accept who they truly are. They suppress their instincts, silence their conscience, or ignore their inner voice, believing they can outrun themselves. They can't. Take Hamlet. Hamlet is intelligent, reflective, deeply aware of the world around him. His mind is sharp, but his heart is divided. From the very beginning, he knows something is wrong. He feels the corruption beneath the surface of the court. He senses betrayal, deception, rot. Yet instead of acting, he hesitates. Hamlet tells himself he needs certainty, more proof, more time, more thought. But beneath all of that is refusal to accept his own nature. He is not a man of quick action, and pretending that he is only leads to paralysis. Shakespeare shows us something uncomfortable here. Self-knowledge without acceptance is useless. Hamlet understands the problem. He simply cannot align his actions with who he truly is. And that inner contradiction slowly destroys him. We see this sign everywhere today. People ignoring their limits, ignoring their emotional needs, ignoring what they know deep down to be true. They stay in situations that drain them. They play roles that don't fit them. They silence discomfort instead of listening to it. And like Shakespeare's characters, they call it strength when it's actually denial. Shakespeare's message is subtle but clear. When you deny your nature, you create inner conflict, and inner conflict left unresolved always finds a way to surface. But denial is rarely loud. It's quiet, rational, reasonable. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Shakespeare understood that human beings are experts at self-deception. We tell ourselves stories to justify our choices. We convince ourselves that we are in control, even when every sign suggests otherwise. Kings pretend they are invincible. Lovers pretend they are immune to jealousy. Friends pretend betrayal won't reach them. And slowly, almost invisibly, the consequences begin to unfold. This is why Shakespeare's work feels so modern. He doesn't expose monsters, he exposes patterns. The pattern is always the same. A character ignores an inner warning, dismisses it as weakness or fear, and moves forward anyway. The tragedy doesn't arrive suddenly, it grows. Quietly. And this is only the beginning. Because once a person denies who they truly are, another force inevitably takes control. A force Shakespeare warned us about repeatedly: ambition without conscience. That is where the next sign reveals itself. And when that sign appears, the fall is almost unavoidable.
Ambition by itself is not evil. Shakespeare knew this. The desire to rise, to become more, to leave a mark, this impulse moves civilizations forward. It builds cities, inspires art, and fuels progress. But Shakespeare also understood something darker. Ambition becomes dangerous the moment it disconnects from conscience. And no character embodies this more clearly than Macbeth. At the beginning of the play, Macbeth is not a villain. He is respected, admired, even honorable, a loyal soldier, a man with a sense of duty. But once ambition enters his mind, once the idea of power plants itself deeply enough, something shifts. Not immediately, not violently, but subtly. Macbeth begins to listen less to his inner moral compass and more to the voice that promises reward. Shakespeare shows us that ambition does not destroy a person overnight. It erodes them slowly, decision by decision, compromise by compromise. The most dangerous ambition is not loud, it whispers. It tells you that one small step won't matter, that one shortcut is justified, that once you reach the top, everything will make sense. Macbeth hears this voice, and instead of questioning it, he obeys. What Shakespeare reveals here is unsettling. Ambition does not blind people, it convinces them they are seeing clearly. Macbeth is fully aware of what he is doing. He understands the moral weight of his actions. He feels guilt before he commits the crime, and yet he proceeds anyway. That's the sign. When awareness exists, but restraint disappears. In Shakespeare's world, this is the moment where tragedy becomes inevitable. And this pattern is everywhere today. People sacrificing values for status, integrity for recognition, peace for achievement. They tell themselves it's temporary, necessary, strategic. But Shakespeare shows us the cost. Once ambition overrules conscience, it never stops asking for more. Macbeth does not find peace after achieving power. He finds paranoia, fear, isolation. The very thing he chased begins to consume him. Shakespeare understood that unchecked ambition doesn't satisfy, it multiplies anxiety. The crown does not calm Macbeth's mind, it accelerates its collapse. Because ambition without conscience creates a person who can never rest. There is always another threat, another rival, another reason to act again. And so the cycle continues. If ambition corrupts the self, jealousy poisons perception. Shakespeare explored this psychological trap with devastating precision in Othello. Othello is not destroyed by reality. He is destroyed by what he believes reality to be. Shakespeare understood something that modern psychology would later define: projection. We don't always see the world as it is, we see it as we are. Othello's jealousy does not come from evidence, it comes from insecurity, a fear of inadequacy, a quiet doubt that he is not enough, not worthy of love, loyalty, or trust. And once that doubt takes root, everything becomes suspicious. A look, a pause, a word spoken too softly.
Shakespeare shows us that jealousy doesn't need proof, it creates its own. This is one of the most dangerous signs of human nature, when inner insecurity begins to rewrite reality. In Othello, Shakespeare reveals how easily the mind can become its own enemy. The character believes he is being rational, cautious, even wise, but in truth, his emotions are steering his conclusions. This is not madness, it is misinterpretation fueled by fear. And once jealousy takes control, it isolates the individual. Trust collapses, dialogue disappears. The mind closes in on itself, reinforcing its own suspicions. Shakespeare understood that jealousy doesn't destroy relationships alone, it destroys the ability to see clearly. We see this today everywhere, in relationships fractured by assumptions, in friendships broken by silence, in online spaces where comparison fuels resentment. Shakespeare saw it centuries ago. Jealousy thrives when self-understanding is weak.
Shakespeare did not romanticize intelligence. He admired it, but he also warned against its excess. And once again, Hamlet stands at the center. Hamlet's mind is sharp, analytical, deeply introspective. He questions motives, examines consequences, dissects morality. But Shakespeare shows us the danger of a mind that never rests. Overthinking becomes paralysis. Hamlet thinks not because he seeks truth, but because thinking delays action. Reflection becomes avoidance. Analysis becomes a shield against responsibility. Shakespeare understood something essential. The mind can become a hiding place. Hamlet is not weak. He is overwhelmed. The more he thinks, the heavier the world becomes. Every action carries infinite consequences. Every decision fractures into endless possibilities. And so he waits. Shakespeare's insight is brutal. Excessive thought can disconnect us from life itself. This sign feels painfully modern. People trapped in indecision, afraid to choose, afraid to fail, afraid to move. They mistake constant thinking for wisdom, but Shakespeare shows us that wisdom requires movement, not endless reflection. The tragedy of Hamlet is not ignorance, it is delay. And delay, like denial, ambition without conscience, and jealousy, slowly shapes the same outcome: loss. By this point, a pattern should be clear. These signs are not isolated flaws, they are connected. One leads naturally to the next. Denial opens the door to ambition. Ambition fuels insecurity. Insecurity distorts perception. Overthinking freezes action. Shakespeare did not invent these patterns, he revealed them. And once seen, they are impossible to ignore. Which brings us to the final and most important question. Why do we keep repeating them? That is where the true lesson of Shakespeare's mind awaits. Shakespeare did not romanticize intelligence. He admired it, but he also warned against its excess. And once again, Hamlet stands at the center. Hamlet's mind is sharp, analytical, deeply introspective. He questions motives, examines consequences, dissects morality. But Shakespeare shows us the danger of a mind that never rests. Overthinking becomes paralysis. Hamlet thinks not because he seeks truth, but because thinking delays action. Reflection becomes avoidance. Analysis becomes a shield against responsibility. Shakespeare understood something essential. The mind can become a hiding place. Hamlet is not weak, he is overwhelmed. The more he thinks, the heavier the world becomes. Every action carries infinite consequences. Every decision fractures into endless possibilities. And so he waits. Shakespeare's insight is brutal. Excessive thought can disconnect us from life itself. This sign feels painfully modern. People trapped in indecision, afraid to choose, afraid to fail, afraid to move.
They mistake constant thinking for wisdom, but Shakespeare shows us that wisdom requires movement, not endless reflection. The tragedy of Hamlet is not ignorance, it is delay. And delay, like denial, ambition without conscience, and jealousy, slowly shapes the same outcome: loss. By this point, a pattern should be clear. These signs are not isolated flaws, they are connected. One leads naturally to the next. Denial opens the door to ambition. Ambition fuels insecurity. Insecurity distorts perception. Overthinking freezes action. Shakespeare did not invent these patterns, he revealed them. And once seen, they are impossible to ignore. Which brings us to the final and most important question. Why do we keep repeating them? That is where the true lesson of Shakespeare's mind awaits. After centuries of reading Shakespeare, watching his plays and quoting his words, one question remains unavoidable. If these signs are so clear, why do we keep ignoring them? The answer Shakespeare gives us is not comforting, because these signs don't feel dangerous at first. They feel familiar. Denial feels like self-control. Ambition feels like motivation. Jealousy feels like protection. Overthinking feels like intelligence. Shakespeare understood that human beings rarely fall because of obvious evil. They fall because they mistake their inner warnings for virtues. This is why his tragedies are so powerful. The characters don't wake up one day as villains. They become trapped in patterns they no longer recognize. And by the time they do, the damage is already done. Shakespeare never presents fate as an external force. There is no mysterious destiny pulling strings behind the scenes. The tragedies unfold because of choices, small, rationalized choices that accumulate over time. This is the most unsettling lesson of Shakespeare's mind. We participate in our own downfall, not consciously, not intentionally, but gradually. A moment of silence instead of honesty, a compromise instead of a boundary, a thought delayed instead of an action taken. Shakespeare shows us that human nature doesn't collapse dramatically, it erodes. What separates tragedy from wisdom in Shakespeare is not intelligence. It is awareness and the courage to act on it. Characters who survive Shakespeare's worlds are not flawless. They are simply more honest with themselves. They recognize their limits. They question their impulses. They listen when something inside them feels wrong. Tragic characters do the opposite. They explain themselves. They justify themselves. They delay confronting themselves. Shakespeare understood something essential. The mind is incredibly skilled at self-protection. It avoids pain by avoiding truth. And so the warning signs are ignored. In King Lear, a powerful ruler confuses flattery for loyalty. In Julius Caesar, confidence turns into blindness. In Romeo and Juliet, emotion outruns patience. Different stories, same pattern. Shakespeare's message is not that humans are doomed, it's that they are predictable. And predictability, once recognized, can be interrupted. This is why Shakespeare endures. Not because of his language alone, not because of tradition or academic reverence. He matters because he explains us to ourselves. Long before psychology had names for projection, cognitive bias, or emotional reasoning, Shakespeare was dramatizing them on stage. He wasn't diagnosing disorders, he was revealing tendencies. The tendency to ignore discomfort, the tendency to chase power without reflection, the tendency to mistrust what we fear losing, the tendency to think instead of act. These tendencies haven't disappeared. They've only changed costumes. Shakespeare's characters wear crowns,
armor and robes. We wear titles, profiles, and expectations. But the mind beneath them remains the same. And this is the true power of Shakespeare's work. It doesn't age, because human nature doesn't evolve as fast as we pretend it does. Shakespeare never ends his tragedies with a lecture. He ends them with silence. A stage filled with bodies, a kingdom emptied, a life wasted. And in that silence, the warning is clear. All of this was preventable, not by avoiding pain, not by suppressing desire, but by paying attention to the signs. So the question Shakespeare leaves us with is not what went wrong. It is, when did they stop listening to themselves? That question is just as relevant today as it was 400 years ago. And perhaps that is why his work still unsettles us. Because somewhere, in Hamlet's doubt, Macbeth's ambition, Othello's jealousy, we recognize ourselves, not as villains, but as humans.
Shakespeare didn't predict the future. He understood the mind. He understood that human nature moves in patterns, and that those patterns, when ignored, always lead to the same endings. But awareness changes everything. The moment you recognize a pattern, you regain choice. And that is where Shakespeare stops being tragedy and becomes insight. Timeless wisdom, real life, the human mind uncovered. Welcome to Shakespeare's Mind.